Hello, my friends. This is Brother Johnny. We're looking at understanding this plight of greed that we have. We're in Luke chapter 12, and we're looking at verses 16 through 21. And we're going to spend four different moments looking at this. We've already looked at the first one, and we looked at the first part, which was misdirected worship, whenever mankind has misdirected worship. And today, as we look at the plight of our soul and how things go greedily in our souls if we're not careful, we're looking at materialism versus the imago Dei, which means, or Dei, means the image of God. Materialism versus the image of God. Verse 19 is a verse that we were looking at earlier, and we're going to continue with verse 19. It says, "And I will say to my soul, soul, you have many goods laid up for many years to come. Take your ease, eat, drink, and be merry." This is this parable of this rich young man who God has blessed with a great crop. And he's already had money and crops, but he had barns full of crops and food already, but now he's had this great year. And when he looks at himself, he sees that he needs to do something with all those crops, and he decides instead of to use it for God's work, he's going to store it and save it and use it for his pleasure. And so he says, "I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll tear down all my old barns and I'll build these new barns." And when he does that, he says, "Oh, I've got everything I need for years to come. So I'm just going to lay back, take it easy, eat, drink, and be merry." And today, what I want to think about as we think about this verse, as he said that, I'm just going to take it easy, eat, drink, and be merry. We need to look at the thought of materialism versus the image of God. He said in verse 19, he talked to his soul. He says, "And I will say to my soul, soul, you have many goods laid up for many years to come." And then he says, "Let's just eat, drink, and be merry. Let's take it easy." He talks to his soul. And the problem is he don't understand about his soul and what his soul is. And he is looking at what the world has to offer, which is materialism. And by the way, we all struggle with wanting to be rich, wanting to have it easy, wanting to have all the good things. We don't want to drive an old beat-up car. We want a brand new Cadillac. We want the fanciest of the fancies. We don't want a little house. We want a big old giant house. We want a big pool. We want servants and maids and yard keepers. We don't have to do all that ourselves. We want to lay back and we want to take it easy. And that is a problem of materialism that man has and wants and desires. And so in this scripture, we're looking at this materialism that this guy is holding on to. He's holding on to this materialism, thinking somehow this materialism is going to get him through life. But what we're to look at is the holiness and the image of God and praise and worship him. One of man's flaws, and this rich young man's flaw, was that he assumed that his soul was defined by his body and earthly possessions. You see that, you see all these weightlifters and bodybuilders and athletes, and they work hard to define this body, make this body look big and strong and tough, and they somehow think sometimes that with this body I can accomplish all things, and with this body I'm my own boss. And then also with people who are accumulating wealth, they look at their wealth and say, "Hey, I'm in control. I'm not worried about my light bill. I'm not worried about my taxes. I'm not worried about anything. I've got all the money in the world to take care of it all." And what happens is we fall into a fatal flaw of this materialistic thinking that keeps us away from following Christ and serving God, keeps us away from a relationship with God, a relationship of salvation with God. And what man does sometimes is we mistake that which is temporary for the physical vessel and our eternal identity. We sometimes mistake that which is temporary in our physical vessel instead of looking at that which is our eternal identity. And so in this verse, it tells us very clearly, this guy, he was looking at his abilities through his money, and he didn't realize God was the one that gave him the money, that God was the one that gave him the good crops. And as I close this thought, just be careful not to mistake the difference between your wants and your responsibility to follow and serve God. Remember, like, share, follow, help us out. God bless.